Hello guys, and welcome back to another video on the After Effects for Animations Beginners course. Today we're going to finish the rest of the 5 cuts in chapter 3. Let's begin. Here we got the timesheet for cut 8. A couple things to note here. In the B cell, there are 2 rows inside the column. This means we're going to need 2 of the cell B footage in our composition. In the direction box, it says overlap B1 and C1 to B2. Overlapping is the process of transposing the materials while making them transparent. In our case, in anime, we will need 2 transparent materials to overlap. In the camera column, B1 and C1 will fade out, noted by the reducing triangle, while B2 will fade in. Let's go into After Effects now. I have already imported the footage for this cut, as well as remapped the timing of them. I also made cell C a hollow brush, just what we did for cut 6. Let's duplicate cell B by either going to Edit, Duplicate, or Ctrl D. This will give us our B2. I'm going to change the color of B2 by going to this tag box here, and I'm going to choose orange. Then I'm going to remap the timing of this. Let's move to the overlapping process. Let's start with B2. Make sure you're on the first frame and change the opacity of B2 to 0% and make a keyframe. Then go to the 24th frame and change the opacity to 100%. Now let's do the rest. Instead of changing the opacity of B1, C1, and the track mattes file separately, let's combine them into one pre-comp layer. Control click the footages, right click, and select pre-compose. I'm going to name mine fade out and make sure this option is selected here and select OK. Now we're going to change all the materials at once. Make sure you're on the first frame and make a keyframe on opacity. Then go to the 24th frame and change the opacity to 0%. Now if you preview the cut, the 2 footages do indeed fade in and out just what we told them to do. But we don't want the footages to fade in the background. To fix the problem, we're going to need to change the blending mode on the fade out comp. Remember, if you don't see this option, click this button here. Click on the blending drop box and select Alpha Add. This doesn't fix the problem yet because Alpha Add adds transparency to all layers placed below, and the background layer is below that. So now, all we need to do is combine these 2 layers by making another pre-comp. Now we got what we want. Go ahead and save this file. Here's the timesheet for cut 9. In the direction box, it says we're going to create a quick track back or quickly zooming in. We're also going to need to add motion blur to it to give it that surprise feel. In addition to that, we're going to need to change the shadow cell's opacity to 60%. And we're going to need to add easing to the track back. In After Effects, I already imported all the footage, remapped the timing, and changed the opacity of the shadow to 60%. I also resized the cuts to around 71% to match up with the outer box of the layout. Now we're going to work on the quick track back effect. Let's make a new composition with the same setting and put the old comp in here to nest it. Unhide the quick track back sheet and go to the new comp. Make sure you are on the first frame and scale down to the blue A box. Make a keyframe for both the scale and the position. Now go to the 12th frame and match the screen with the red B box. Hide the quick track back layer and check your movement. Now we're going to open the graph editor. Make sure you're on the speed graph and select the 12th frame keyframes by control clicking and selecting Easy In. Now we have our easing. This button here will enable motion blur to all footages marked with this icon here. Unfortunately, we have zoomed in our image, but we cannot click the collapse transform button because of the motion blur. There is a solution to this, and that's by turning on the motion blur off here. There's a solution to this, and that's by turning the motion blur off here, going to the old comp and turning on the motion blur on all the footages, then come back to the new comp and turn on the collapse transform. Make sure the motion blur is turned on and enabled. Let's preview your cut. If it works, go ahead and save your file. Here's the timesheet for cut 10. In the direction box, we're going to use another blending mode for the seed top layer called multiply. I'll explain what this will do a bit later. We also need to slide cell A and add easing. I already got all the footage in After Effects. We mapped everything and adjusted the scale of all the footage. Let's knock out the slide for cell A first. Unhide the slide sheet and change the opacity to around 50%. Let's hide the book layer as well. The slide begins at the 103rd frame, so adjust the position of cell A to match the B position and make a keyframe. Then move to the 144th frame and adjust the position to match the red B position. Open the graph editor, select the 144th frame and select Easy In. Hide the graph editor and check your movement. Before we are done with this cut, we need to blend these two layers together. The direction says for us to multiply, so in the blending drop box, select multiply. This will blend darker colors together with the layer below it, and the colors will never be brighter than the original, thus giving us that blended shadow expression that we wanted. Let's go ahead and preview the file, see if it works, and if it does, go ahead and save this cut. For cut 11, we're going to need to add a transmitted light effect to cell B and make it shine sharply. We're also going to pan the camera and ease it at the end. Take special note here at the timing at the end of cell B. We're going to create what's called empty cells. More on that later. I've imported all the footage that we need, including the pan sheet. So if we're going to move the entire screen, we need to resize the composition to match the size of the layout. After that, we will need to remap all the footage according to the timesheet. For cell B, go ahead and remap what's on the timesheet. Go to the 76th frame, make a keyframe on the opacity. On the 77th and 80th frame, change the opacity to 0. Then on the 79th and 81st frame, change the opacity to 100%. Make sure you toggle hold the keyframes. With this, you have created an empty cell. Now that we get all of that out of the way, let's duplicate cell B for our lighting effect. I'm going to change the color of my duplicate. We're going to use the original as the base. Let's open up our effect and preset panel. If we don't see it, go to Window, Effects and Presets. In the effect panel, go to Stylize, Glow, and drag it on the duplicate B cell. We will see a new effects tab on the duplicate, and a new effect tab will open up in the project panel. In either tab, change the glow radius to 50%. This will increase the light intensity. Because the atmosphere of light does not appear, set the blending mode to Add. The Add Blend option will mix in lighting colors similar to mixing a projected light. Now for the pan. Create a new composition with 1920 by 1080 and drag the old comp in it. Unhide the pan sheet and make sure the frame is on 1. In the new comp, adjust the scale and position to align with the A position and make a keyframe on position. Then go to the 72nd frame and adjust this position to align with the red B position. After you check your motion, add easing by opening the graph editor, control clicking the 72nd keys and selecting Easy Ease In. Go ahead and check your movement again, and if it looks good, go ahead and save this cut. And let's move on to the final cut of chapter 3.